Hi everyone, this is Julie Martinez-Hayes. I'm going to do a custom lab demo and show you how to install the Server 2019 standard. That's part of week 1 of NOS230. We're going to use the basic Word document in the lab, and the only thing this lab assumes you already have set up is VMware. That was part of NOS110 and was encouraged to be used in NOS130. If you do not have your VMware license available, you can use VirtualBox, which is a free download and setup. It's very similar. Some people prefer it. If you've had NOS120, the Linux class, that uses VMware or VirtualBox. So I'm going to open VMware just to confirm it still works. It usually tells you how many days left you have on your license. And it actually says, yes, you've got another year. So we're going to be creating a new virtual machine in a moment, but I'm just going to minimize this because the other key element to having VMware or any hypervisor is we're going to use the ISO file, which is ISO is a disk image file. So it's basically one single file that represents everything on a DVD, an installation disk that you would use. We're going to get the ISO file from the same place that NOS110 used when you got your Windows 10 ISO download. So this is where you get all the free software from Microsoft through our school, because the school allows you to have access to these things. So let's pull open this Azure for Education link right here. Hope you can open a hyperlink. These links are also listed in course resources. There's an entry for useful links, and Azure for Education / DevOps is one of them. I'm going to pull over the page so you can see this. It will have if you use the link straight from the lab or the useful links area, it should have a single sign-on, go straight through and have your email address as part of it, and say Microsoft Azure, but you will need to do a separate sign-in process just to confirm. Most of them use your cell phone. I might have saved here, shouldn't see that. And then it will ask for confirmation, so I'll be getting a text in a moment, unless I didn't clear cookies since the last time I used it. Okay. Since I used it recently enough, before closing my browser, I don't have to answer the text, apparently. This is key. I want you to see exactly what's going on here. Let me move the recording commands. All right. So it's got me logged in, knows that I'm with Wake Tech, and I have software on the left. So this knows for sure that you are properly logged in and have access to these resources. You have access to a ton of software for free as long as you are taking technical classes and at Wake Tech. So you have a lot of tools. You can use Endpoint Manager and install that on a server in a test lab at home and learn some endpoint configuration things. If you look up endpoint in Indeed.com and look for the salaries of what an endpoint system administrator can earn, it starts about $90K. So you've got some software here that takes some practice, and yet you have free access to it. So go for it. What we need to look for, all right, and it's our first snip. Actually, our first snip is to show that we got logged in to Azure for Education. So step 1 is getting Azure for Education logged in. I give an example of what it looks like when I'm logged in, and we have typed Windows Server 2019. Sorry, I have a loud keyboard. I shouldn't hit it so hard. Let's expand this a little bit. There. So our first snip for this lab is to prove that we can get properly into Azure for Education. We know where to go to the software part, and we've already searched by Windows Server 2019 and seen this handful of results. We're going to use this bottom one, but take a snip that includes your email address in the upper right. Make sure it has the software screen here and shows these results. Okay, that is the example, and then we have just to make things easier to grade for us, we have an answer sheet. So for snip number 1, that would be the snip for that. This number 1 is Azure for Education, and you would just paste it right in here. We're going to use this bottom option, 2019 Standard. When you get software, you will have an option to get the license key to make it legal. I'm not going to click on this button because that would show you my license key. You want to download this file here. Make sure you save this somewhere, or at least you know how to get back to it, but save it in a very private place because this is not information you want to get out. If someone else uses your key, you won't be able to. There are limited access to this. I'm now downloading the software. It's got a paren1 at the end because I've already downloaded it when I demoed it to my seated class. It's going to open when complete, and it's already it says 34 minutes left. That's craziness. It did not take that long. In seated class, this better not be downloading someplace that's synchronizing with OneDrive. Okay, it's going to downloads. I'm going to let that run. Hopefully that's going to take you less than it took me. It took about 2 minutes on campus, so if for some reason it's giving you trouble, you can go to campus. Even if you're using a computer in the registration area that has a USB drive on the side, just bring a big enough USB drive to hold this file, and you'd be all set. Our next snip is going to involve getting, I'm not going to require that you show me your license key. There is no snip required for Section 2. You just download the file and you save the key. One option is to save a snip of the license key, so there's no metadata about it that shows what's in it. You'd have to have some fancier tools to do that. We're going to open VMware and create, let me not maximize this, because this is too big of a screen. Come on. Corner. There we go. We're going to create a new VM, and I'll show you some of the specs on how to do this. Create a new virtual machine. We're making this custom. The hardware compatibility. We're using Workstation 17. I don't plan on using this for any other version of VMware. If for some reason you're bouncing back and forth between computers and you have to copy a VM and one of those is a different level, then you might want to change this. But to be honest, I've got one installation of VMware that I use and that's it. So we're keeping that as is. Now this is key. It's asking you where is the source information coming from. You're going to be using the ISO file that you saved. I organize my files in a software library. So even though the file that we are currently downloading is going into the downloads area, all right, and I've already got some there listed there. It's a big file. This one isn't done yet, but I wouldn't, even if after it's installed, I wouldn't install it from this location. I would move it to a place where I can get to it again later. Let me show you my software library. The software library is going to show different apps and any installation files that I used for them. I've got several for VMware Workstation Pro. I've got several for different types of servers. I've got Server 2012. Windows 10, I probably have earlier Windows because I tested things. I tested user migration or something like that. I'm surprised I don't have Windows 11 in here. So I created a folder to show where I kept my file, and I have the file, the ISO file here locally in an organized place that isn't going to get copied and pasted and moved. So every time I reopen the VM, it's going to go here. Does that make sense? So move the ISO file someplace more permanent where you're going to keep it, but it's still going to be a fast install for you. For me, the key here is that it's outside of the Documents folder because I'm synchronized with OneDrive. You do not want this folder location be part of the synchronization in your OneDrive on a regular basis. You can have OneDrive grab it once in a while, but not every single time you make a change. I will paste this later to a version of what we want to sell. Change this, please. Be careful with which one you're adding right now, because even though it's a single ISO file, we have several options. The Data Center Core and Standard Core. Server Core is a headless command line server, so it has no GUI. The Data Center and Standard options will have a GUI. We're just using the Standard for now. You get to put in your default user, what your user is going to be. I just have my, what did I make my username? I didn't have a username. I just personalized it to be JM Hayes. Oops, typo. We can set this to log on automatically, but that's not safe. Yes. I'm going to continue without a key. Now this is where you change something. Under the virtual machine name, I need you to name it for yourself so that I know when this is all done, that it's what the VM is and who you are as a student, so when I see the answer sheets that they're all different. Okay, so we're making this your first name and then server 2019. Where are you going to put this VM? Again, if you put it inside the OneDrive area, it is going to be slow as molasses. So change the location, please. If you do not already have a place to put virtual machines on your C drive, make one. I'm going to make one. Then make a new folder. Server demo. So virtual machine, server 2019 demo. This is so if I need to browse to the file location that I know where it is, and I already have a folder for virtual machines. They're already organized. Every VM has a separate folder. There will be no confusion as to which file goes to which one. Change your boot, please. So it's going to the firmware to BIOS, not UEFI. The number of processors you can create yourself. All right, so we are back down here. We've already changed the location. We've changed the boot option to BIOS. We're keeping default processors. And for memory, you can change the memory. I recommend 4096. This will depend on your workstation and how much RAM you have on your workstation, including how much virtual memory you are using from your hard disk into your workstation. Virtual memory is a way to use hard disk space as RAM. So even if the machine itself doesn't have a ton of RAM, you can take a slice of hard disk space and use it as virtual memory. I taught this in NOS230, so hopefully you've figured out virtual memory. It was part of NOS230. If 4096 does not work on your computer, scale it back to 2 gig. All right, for the network, for network use and what network switch, host only, I don't recommend. Using the NAT is probably easiest. If you do not want your server getting involved with the local network, say in a classroom or even at the ILC, as soon as it comes on and it's using the host computer's network, then the computers around you will actually see that servers are on and available. So be careful that your server isn't powered on and using the network connection, same network connections as your host computer, while your host computer is part of the WakeTech domain. That will mess some things up. So I'm going to use NAT for now, because I'm on my home computer. The SCSI controller you can keep as is. And NVMe, that is the type of hard disk. You're going to keep that as is. And we're going to create a disk. We're going to create a new virtual hard disk, new VHD. So 60 gigs, this is the default size. Again, depends on the resources of your computer. It is important to make sure you have this stored into multiple files, because 60 gig, depending on how your hard disk is formatted, it wouldn't be able to do it as a single file anyway. So multiple files, and now we get to name the virtual disk. Notice that your virtual hard disk is going to be named as your VM name. Okay, so keep that, keep the location. Virtual machines demo. The virtual hard disk should go into this folder. It has our other hardware here. We don't actually need to power it on right this second. It says to the lab says to go ahead and let it power on. So we're going to do that. This will take a while. I will pause the recording, and it honestly doesn't. The grand total time it took in the classroom, start to finish, was 15 minutes, including downloading the ISO. So this actually doesn't take all that long, but if it does for you, go ahead, take a coffee break, and you can come back to the video when you're ready. Just notice before you do this, this yellow bar at the bottom, it's going to be installing VMware tools in a minute, and it will require a separate reboot for the installation of VMware tools. So go ahead and allow that to happen. If it needs any clicks or confirmations, go ahead and let them happen. When you get back and you take the snip of your hardware tab to show the settings, this will be, you can actually get it here. Oh, if you've not used VMware before, also please note this, in this lower left corner, the Control-Alt will actually let go of the mouse and lets it go back into the host, so I can use my mouse over in the documents. So just be careful that it's where your mouse is, which computer has control of your mouse at this moment. Okay, now this is the part we're going to pause and just let these installation files run. So just let this run. Hi everyone, just wanted to show the screen that's going to force you to restart, that shows up after a couple of reboots along the way. Servers are big and offer a lot of services and can be a little slow, so reboots do not take the kind of time you're used to with having your laptop reboot. It's very different. It's kind of like trying to start an 18-wheeler and putting it in gear. Very, very different process. When you do see the one that says VMware Tools, let it do its thing. It'll make life a lot easier for you. If your screen shows like mine and has nothing visible on the left side, You want to get my mouse alt. All right, get the mouse. I can't write yet. Control Alt. There we go. Control Alt to get out of the VM while it's booting. Under View, you want to customize and add the library. The library is this list of things on the side, and you can tell that I already did this for a bit. I have several VMs, some of them done for demo. Now, one of the things you can show about the VM at this point is settings. You want to see the settings of the VM even though it's on in a different window. And these are your next snips. The next snips here, once you're getting this started, the one will be of this hardware tab and the other one will be of the options tab. Okay, and you want to make sure that it's wide enough that I can see this path. See, you want to click on something that shows the path, or, yeah, that should be good enough. Yep, hardware tab. So again, your hardware tab here, I'm not clicking away. There we go. Include the tab at the top that gives your name and so that's the VM name itself. And include this whole window down to about here, over to here, so I can see this far. Okay, and I would prefer that you tell me that you select the CD/DVD so I can see where it's going, what it might be doing, and I get to see this connected at power on. That's important, and that's the most important part here because the rest of it I can see right from this view. The other snip will be your Options tab. The Options tab is going to show me a little bit more, also where it's going, what you've named it, and just to see if your auto login is disabled or not. But I do want to see both tabs, Options and Hardware, and you can put them back to back right on VM, VM Hardware, and then VM Options. Include the working directory and the VM name in your snip. So I want to see these things. And the next part will be your server dashboard. Just hit OK. And we're going to hit Control-Alt-Delete. Now, how to send Control-Alt-Delete to a VM? Well, in VMware, there's this magic button up here that says Send Control-Alt-Delete to this virtual machine. There. And you're clicked in. And once you click in this field for password, you're in the VM. I might have to do it twice. There we go. And some things will load right away. You'll get the server manager loading right away. You can also use the admin center. So that's another option to use the admin center. You can get to a lot of menu options and consoles in this tool menu. Okay. You can click on the server and look for information about the server. So we never named the computer, we only named the VM, which is why you get this weird computer name here. It's got some information about updates. If we widen this a bit, you'll actually see more information about the server. I'm not going to have enough dexterity right now to do it without messing up my Word document. Corner. There we go. So you come to the server dashboard. It starts at the dashboard, looks at your server, looks at the roles that are involved, and makes sure they're all healthy, they're all green, no events have a delayed start. You can manage more servers than this one right here. So you can right-click and start some things, and you can shut down an actual server just from here, or click on the computer name and go straight to PowerShell, which is extremely useful. So you can look at a bunch of servers in a row, 5, 6, 10, 30, and say, I want to start PowerShell on this one. And you can start PowerShell right there. You can also start keeping tabs of something. Right-click on the server name and go to Performance Counters. If you remember that from NOS130, that could be really useful if the NIC, if people are saying this is really slow, then you can check out what the NIC is doing and what the processors are doing. And for file and storage services, that's one of the major services installed on this server. So when you click on that on the left side, you get a whole new console of something else going on. Back to the dashboard, you get that dashboard icon, and you've got some options here. If something needs to be reloaded, or if there is a warning saying, hey, you installed something but it's not done yet, the reload here. That's a refresh. That's also useful if you make configuration changes or you just added a brand new service and it's not showing up quite right. Your first step is to refresh here. The second step is just to restart the server, which would be lower left, like Windows 10. When you restart, it's going to ask you whether it was planned or not. It's going to ask you for some confirmation. This yellow notifications flag doesn't look yellow right now, but it will if something needs attention, put it that way. It will change color and point out that something greatly needs attention. A lot of the work we do is right in this Tools menu. A lot of server, you can have shortcuts to get to these things. We don't have it. We're not a domain controller yet, so quite a few tools that I'm looking for aren't there yet, like Active Directory users and computers and Admin Center, Active Directory console, and things like that. So what we need to do at this point is take a snip to prove that you are in your server. It will reboot. Section 4, reboot. Section 5, I show you the Control-Alt-Delete. I want to see the local server console with the VM name. This is the VM name that you did not assign it. It's just the computer's name as it was given. So you want to include this tab at the top and include this upper half of the window so I can see a little bit of settings. I can see the memory. I can see that it's not activated yet. We haven't put the key login, the security key for the operating system in yet. And I get to see the computer name and the workgroup name. Installed updates automatically. We know what it's set for. So you get the picture. Start from this tab, take a snip that includes all the way over to here. Okay? And you can pause while you're doing that and paste it in the answering sheet. Answer sheet. So this would be snip number 5. All right, after snip number 5, an example of mine, we're going to change the name. So from this, let's get this back in the menu. From this computer name, you're going to click on this computer name. And you're going to get to a window that lets you change some things. So we're going to hit change, and you're going to change both the computer name and the workgroup name. Now the lab instructions say that your computer name will be first name server, so this will be Julie Server. Hello. It's hard for the mouse to go back and forth and not get confused. Server. And workgroup name, I believe, is going to be your last name. Yes, last name for the workgroup name. My last name is very long, so I'm going to change it to Mart Hayes. Martinez Hayes is a little long. You can shorten your name however you like. When you hit the OK button, it will require a reboot. So we're going to go back to the change screen briefly. And it will say, look, I got to reboot to make these changes active. Notice that we changed the computer name and not the computer description. So under System Properties, there's this top box right in back of us here. I don't know that it'll let us switch. Yeah, I can't drag that out of the way. But there's computer description, then computer name. Description doesn't say a whole lot, but you can have some description in the computer name itself. So in terms of what department, not necessarily what user, but maybe what building or what department owns it. It's also best practices to include the serial number of the computer in the computer name. For servers, it goes a little bit different. For servers, oftentimes we have a function associated with it, like DC would be a domain controller, SA is a standalone server, etc. We're going to take a snip. Don't hit OK through this. We're going to take a snip of this pop-up window. It's very important. It says, "Welcome to the Martes workgroup." This means it is official. You have joined this new workgroup. Notice that it didn't exist. I just typed it and I made it happen. Okay, that's how workgroups are made. But if you were to join a domain, you'd have to put in the administrator credentials, login and password of an administrator level account, and then it would have to accept you and create a computer account in the domain for your computer, and then it would say, "Welcome to the domain." So it's an important confirmation box. Take a snip of this confirmation box, and that will be snip number 6. Welcome to the last name workgroup. All right, let's move that aside. Hit OK. It's going to restart. I will pause while this restarts. Okay, we're back. We're going to hit Control-Alt-Delete, log back into our server. Wait for the server manager to come up. Keep a look open for the services here, this lower bar. Windows Admin Center. Yes, I'll get there. Aha, see how it comes up red at first? Services are dependent on other services. We did this in NOS130. There is a dependence tab, and one service needs to wait for another service to come up first. So you'll see this often in servers because it takes quite a while for all the dependencies and related dependencies to come up, and then they recheck and try again, and one will recheck and wait and come back up again. So if you're not sure, you can hit refresh. Oftentimes these services can be manually restarted. It says it stopped. It was set for a delayed start. You can right-click and say start it. Eventually these will turn green, by the way. It's just not a quick process. The notification tab is telling me the service I am trying to start is in process, but it's not done yet. That's why I got a notification. It's not very urgent, though. Okay, go away. There. We want to see the new name. There we go. So I've got my new computer name, and I've got my new work group, and everything else should be pretty much the same thing. We didn't change anything else. So your last snip, snip number 7, is to show the new computer name and work group. And you don't have to do the whole thing, just do the tab of your VM name. Let me try to put this aside here. The tab, so I want to include from here over to here. Include computer name and work group and the VM tab. And that's it. That's all I need to see for snip number 7. So I hope that helps. I hope you've got one lab done. And if you have a server here, this will be convenient. You might want to back it up. Definitely make a copy of it or back it up somehow. What I tend to do once I set up a server for the first time, I get it updated. So I connect it to the internet, get all the patches, and then I make a full clone. So I've got a backed up clone. And just mark it so you know it's FC for me means a full clone, and it's my sort of an emergency backup. Okay, that's it. You've got it all set up. Make sure you save your answer sheet when you do a save as. Please, when you save it, put your name in it so it doesn't just say NOS230. I'll know it's NOS230 from the assignment, but add your name instead, so I know whose file this is. Okay? That way, when they get updated, it's just easier. I can download the copies. If I had to download an actual copy and edit the snips so I can see something, that I don't override another student's file by accident. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be around checking email a little bit later. Thanks. Bye-bye.